thank you all for being here, and we will be recording, so I will share that with you afterward. Um, it's good to have our presenters here from USC on generative AI, what librarians need to know, and I am going to just mute and hand it over to you all.
Okay, thank you. I'll get us started. And maybe I'll just have us all introduce ourselves before we talk. I'm Jenna Spiering. I'm an assistant professor here at USC, and I work primarily with school librarians.
I'm Valerie Byrd-Fort, and I'm an instructor at USC, and I also work mostly with school librarians.
And I'm Vanessa Kitzie. I'm an associate professor at USC, and I think my relevance to this is that I teach courses and do some research on social issues with emerging technologies.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for coming. Yeah, our title is Generative AI, What Librarians Need to Know, and it's sort of adapted from a presentation that we're going to be doing at the South Carolina Association for School Librarians in a couple of weeks. So like Valerie and I are normally focusing on school librarians, but as you can see in the chat, we have a wide variety of different settings represented. So we tried to kind of pick and pull things from our presentation that would apply here. And we're not going to just be talking at you for an hour and a half. We've built in a lot of time to kind of test out a few AI tools if you're completely new to things, and try out a few things, and also to interact a little bit in the chat. So we'll be switching it up, not just with presenters, but in our activities. Okay, so when preparing this presentation, of course, we had to start with a question to ChatGPT, like, what do librarians need to know about AI? And you can see, I'm not sure how closely you can see these screenshots, but ChatGPT thinks you need to have a basic understanding of AI, and we do too. But I will say that something you're not going to get in this session is like a highly technical computer science-y kind of view of AI. We're more thinking about AI and use. And we're also people that, while we want to talk about ethics and some of the privacy concerns and things with AI, we're really thinking about what aspects of it to embrace rather than what to be super afraid of. Although we can talk about that too. Oh, and as my colleague Valerie put, if you have any questions as we go, feel free to put them in the chat and we'll just interrupt each other and try to address those. We will talk about data privacy and ethics. We're definitely going to talk about user services, information literacy programs. But what we've got on the agenda today is Dr. Kitzie is going to give us a little overview about what is generative AI, what that means. I'm going to talk a little bit about how we might use some of the tools to increase our own professional productivity. Valerie is going to talk a little bit about what we might share with students and patrons about how they could use AI. Vanessa will go back to ethical concerns. And then we have a little bit of a petting zoo activity at the end for you to look through some tools. We did not come up with that name. That's our colleague Joyce Valenza, who has shared a really great resource with us to share with you of just a lot of different tools and a lot of different areas that we can look through. So we'll leave some time at the end for that. Okay, handing it off to you.
All right, so I wanted to kick us off with some chat-based participation. So when you hear the words artificial intelligence or AI, stick in the chat, what are the first 3 words that come to your mind? So yeah, you have 2 jobs. You have to let us know what age group you work with, and then what are 3 words that come to mind when you hear artificial intelligence or AI. Oh my gosh, Lori, lose my job. Okay, that's a good one. Big Brother. Not a human. Easy to cheat. Okay. Robots, Skynet, dystopia. I like the word dystopia. We'll come back to that. Artificial assistant. Cautious optimism. Okay. So far I've heard the word dystopia on the one hand, and then I have optimism on the other, but proceeding with caution. I also like the not a human. I want to highlight that. Policy, prompt formation. Okay, policy is a very important one. Another tough thing. Y'all are pretty funny. Automation, job elimination. Okay, how to manage, absolutely. Sometimes helpful tool, okay, I like that as well. So what, oh, students become lazy. Makes tasks easier. Man, I gotta steal some of these as examples of what people say about AI. These are pretty good. I'm gonna ask Jenna to advance to the next slide, but please, if you haven't participated yet, or if you think of another good zinger, continue to put them in the chat. So you can go ahead. Yep, there you go. So when thinking about AI, I'm going to go over some definitions, and that's really not meant to be academic of me or just sit here and lecture at you. The reason why I want to go over these definitions is because I think that they do a pretty good job at scoping out what artificial intelligence and specifically generative AI can and cannot do. The other reason why I want to go over definitions is because, as some of you have already indicated in the chat, there are going to be some ethical concerns when it comes to using generative AI. So words like policy, other things that we might think about are things like regulation and how much this has been or hasn't been regulated. And so one of the things that I think that librarians in general, a really important role is going to be developing and fostering among your patrons algorithmic literacy. So thinking about how do I understand things like generative AI, and then how do I share that understanding with other people so that they have more of an informed and holistic understanding of the ways that they can use AI to kind of supplement what it is that they're doing. So again, it goes back to comments like makes tasks easier that you've already put in the chat, while also having an understanding of what AI is limited at, and then also what it can't do. So you're going to see a couple of terms that I'm going to define, because all of these, when put together, comprise the definition of what ChatGPT is. So that's where I wanted to start. So the first one is defining artificial intelligence. And so the definition of artificial intelligence is the theory and development of computer systems able to perform tasks that normally require human intelligence. And so you got at this definition in the chat when you said things like AI, maybe is going to take my job, but then some others said AI is not a human. And so one of the things that I want to point out when we think about AI and how it can perform tasks that normally require human intelligence is that that is not the same thing as saying that AI can replace human intelligence. So as, again, some of you pointed out in the chat, there's a lot of dystopian narratives just about emerging technologies in general. And this dialogue has been going on since like the invention of the printing press, and the idea that like when we start to record information, we're going to get stupider because we're relying less on our memory. Again, these conversations have been around historically since before the emergence of digital technologies. So this is not a new sort of narrative to think about an emerging technology as having a dystopian sort of outcome. And so that's kind of embodied in ideas like AI is going to come and take our jobs, or computers one day are going to become our sentient sorts of overlords. that assumption and that sort of a fear, I'm hoping that I can reassure you by saying at this point, with what technology is capable of, is just that, a fear, not a reality. AI tries to mimic human intelligence, but one thing to keep in mind when we're thinking about the definition is that humans have multiple intelligences. We don't just have one. In general, AI tends to be very, very specific in the types of intelligences that it can master, and it generally does not master multiple intelligences at one point in time. Examples of all of the different types of intelligences that we have as humans are naturalist intelligence, so our ability to distinguish between what's living and what's not, musical intelligence, computational intelligence, that's actually where AI can excel, existential intelligence, so having those sorts of debates about like what is reality, interpersonal intelligence, body kinesthetic intelligence, linguistic intelligence, interpersonal intelligence, and spatial intelligence. So again, AI is typically just very, very good at mimicking one of those intelligences at a time. And that's why often AI is more like an assistant to us in helping us perform tasks, as opposed to taking those tasks over. And we can see this in the typical applications of AI in our everyday lives. So we tend to use AI as virtual assistants to provide handwriting recognition, language translation, facial recognition, filtering spam, conversational systems, and recommendation engines. And so one of the ways that we can think about AI is actually as a seasoning like salt, as opposed to its own food group or meal. So we don't necessarily consider AI on its own. Instead, we could consider it as an addition to a goal that we want to achieve or task that we want to perform. Next slide. So AI, and specifically the type of AI that ChatGPT uses, is machine learning. And so all machine learning is AI, but not all AI is machine learning. So machine learning is kind of a subgroup of artificial intelligence, and it's one that ChatGPT uses. And specifically, it's a branch of artificial intelligence in which a computer generates rules and predictions based on raw data that's been fed into it. And so what that means is that over time, a machine is able to learn how to predict, how to identify and predict patterns and pattern recognition. The other key thing to note about machine learning here is that machine learning is able to take really, really, really large data sets and identify those patterns and make predictions. And so that's an area of AI that's very specific to machine learning, is that it can process large data sets very quickly. Next slide. So another building block of ChatGPT, so it's an AI, but specifically it relies on machine learning, and it also relies on algorithms. So we often think of algorithms as these like black boxes that we don't really understand and that we kind of reserve to different digital systems. So for instance, we might say things like the Google search algorithm knows me, or like when I go on TikTok, my For You page, that algorithm really has an understanding of the sort of content that I like. But what's really interesting is that algorithms play a role in our everyday lives, and we are unknowingly creating and executing algorithms consistently. Because algorithms are basically just a series of steps or different rules that we can take for solving or performing a task. So an example of an algorithm would be your morning routine. So there are elements of your morning routine. For instance, for me, a really important task is in my morning routine is getting to work. And there's a series of steps that I have to take to accomplish that. I have to wake up. I have to put on clothes, probably a good idea for everybody that I work with. I have to pack my lunch. I have to have coffee. right? And so it's not only about thinking of the different steps that I need to take to perform the task, it's also thinking about what's the best order to put those steps in to most efficiently accomplish the task. So for instance, I will probably not dress in colors that match unless I have my coffee before I pick my outfit, right? So I can start to order things like an algorithm in order to accomplish the task of getting to work. And so different algorithms can exist for accomplishing the same task, just like your morning routine and the order in which you might perform things can change over time, right? So algorithms are often judged by their efficiency, and efficiency can mean different things in different sorts of contexts. So we can think about efficiency by how long an algorithm takes to do a task. So how quick does my morning routine need to be in the morning? How well it does the task, or how much energy it uses. So maybe if I skip that cup of coffee, I might get to work sooner, but it's not going to be something where I feel that great. And so efficiency is going to matter based on the context. And specifically what ChatGPT draws on when it's thinking about machine learning algorithms is computational thinking, specifically computational algorithms, where it breaks down a problem into its most basic parts and then organizes them. This is why algorithms are really, really good for solving specific problems like ordering a list. The problem is when we start to rely on these technologies to solve social problems. So as an example, it would be easy for me to give an algorithm a list and ask it to sort that list alphabetically. It would be concerning to me if I asked an algorithm to look at my social network from my different social media pages and invite my 5 most interesting friends over my house next weekend. Because my question would be, well, how does the algorithm define what's or who is interesting? And that could be a social sort of question that can lead to ethical issues. Okay, next slide, Jenna. So there is a difference between artificial intelligence and machine learning. And what's important to note is that while all machine learning is artificial intelligence, it's a specific subset, and it's specifically what powers ChatGPT. So in artificial intelligence, people set the terms for the algorithms that the computer uses. So they decide what factors are really important in making a decision, and then the weight of those factors. Whereas machine learning, the computer is the one who is going to construct the algorithm by recognizing patterns and predicting what comes next in the sequence. So as a basic example, if I give you the numerical sequence 2468, the next number, we could all just say it in our heads, that would come in that sequence is 10, right? So we can recognize that pattern and we can make a conclusion as to what the most likely next piece of information would be. That is how machine learning works. It just does it on a very large scale. But again, the most important thing here is that the person is not creating the algorithm to do this. The computer is, right? So again, you're not engineering any sort of social considerations into that initial algorithm. You're asking the machine to determine patterns and make predictions to generate the algorithm itself. Next slide. And then finally, another thing about ChatGPT that we have to think about is that not only does it rely on machine learning where the computer creates the algorithm, but it relies on deep learning. And so this is a subset of machine learning where computers aren't just recognizing that 2468 pattern and predicting what happens next, but they also get better at making predictions over time. So this is why often you might feel like digital technologies that you interact with almost are like reading your mind, Or sometimes people will say things like, my phone must be listening to me because I just was talking to a friend about how much I'm craving a pizza. And then I go on Instagram and what is there? An ad for pizza, right? So something has to be recording me. Actually, the answer is you are not being recorded. What is actually happening is that you have this system that's relying on large-scale data sets to make these predictions. It's engaging in deep learning over time, and it gets better and better at predicting your future behavior. So just to give you an example here, I have this doctoral student, Nick. He's a really nice guy. Whenever he teaches, he brings food and beverages for his classes. And I'm a very hungry, snack food motivated person. And so I will often go to Nick when I am looking for a snack or like a pick-me-up during the day. So couple months ago, I go to Nick's office and I say, hey, do you have any snacks? I'm really hungry. And he looked at me as if I had just read his mind, because he was like, how did you know that I just went to Costco this morning? And I said, well, Nick, it's just because I know your personality, right? And like, I know that you typically have snacks available. And so you're who I'm going to go to, right? When I want to have a snack. And so again, this is just a very simplistic example of what computer systems like ChatGPT do on a large scale. They don't see the future, but they are very, very good at making predictions of what the average person might do based on prior behavior. And so this will be very important when we come back to some of the concerns that people dropped in the chat about students and using ChatGPT to plagiarize. Okay, last one, and then I promise the boring like lecture stuff will stop and somebody more interesting will be talking again. So putting it all together, what is generative AI like ChatGPT? So ChatGPT takes AI, specifically machine learning and deep learning, and it uses it in order to create new content. That can be text, so like answers to your questions or a short story that you ask it to write. It could be images, video, sounds, code, and calculation. Now, the difference between this process and human creativity is that the algorithm is predicting what you are going to find to be creative or interesting based on the prompt that you've given it and the patterns that it's seen in the data that it's been trained on. So it functions differently than human creativity, which is another argument for why I don't think it's necessarily going to replace people. So I'm going to stop now and give it back, I think, to Jenna, who will talk about how we can leverage ChatGPT for productivity. You're muted.
Whoopsies. I'm going to be talking about how we can, leverage larger AI models to increase our own professional productivity. And on the screen here, I've got some of the big ones. So Bing, and then the chat that goes with that, Copilot, as well as Bard or Gemini, Claude, ChatGPT. We're going to be focusing a lot on ChatGPT today just because we don't really have time to kind of parse through the differences between all of these models. And that's the one that people think of. It's the one that's most largely used. But this is a table that I snatched from the One Useful Thing blog, which I have taken a lot of information from this blog if you're not familiar with it. And I've got it linked if we share the slides, but it just does a little bit of comparing of the different models. And I think as evidenced from what was shared in the chat, that like Bing has some more personality than ChatGPT, etc. So there are some slight differences, but again, we're going to kind of focus today on ChatGPT, and we'll do a little bit of playing around with prompts in ChatGPT. This is a report that came out from UNESCO about specifically ChatGPT and AI in higher education, but I just wanted to share a couple of things from that report. First of all, they asked ChatGPT to explain itself in 50 words, and it's a large language model developed by OpenAI. It can generate human-like text-based on input prompts, answer questions, and perform a variety of natural language processing tasks. So of course it's talking to us like it's a person. And that's why we can sometimes think that it can replace a person, sometimes it's more useful if we treat it like a person, but of course it's not. And I think that this little flow chart is useful for thinking about when and how to use ChatGPT. Does it matter if the output you're asking for is true? If you're asking it to come up with like some ideas for things you could do this weekend, it doesn't necessarily matter if it's true. Am I asking it to come up with conclusions for research I'm doing? It does matter if it's true, right? So just some different ways to think about when you would use it or when you would need to do a little bit more thinking about the output that it's putting out for you. And as we were sort of planning this, I think that we were interested in like, where does ChatGPT get its information and what are its limitations? Valerie just did a quick chat, who won the Caldecott in 2023. It's not going to be able to give you the answer to that because ChatGPT 3.5 only has data up until 2022. So it's not going to be able to give us like really current information. It's not like a search engine. It's not connected to the internet. It's not constantly getting new information, and it can't get behind a paywall. So that's important to remember. All of the data on ChatGPT is coming from these sources: Wikipedia, Books 1 and Books 2, Common Crawl, which is like a huge collection of data that a lot of these models are using. And so there are some limitations to what we're actually able to get in terms of the information. This is another blog post that I put up here, thinking about productivity. And in it, they say that they surveyed a lot of people about using AI in their own work. And they said that they were asked to describe the use of generative AI in their work. Respondents highlighted use cases clustering around 4 common areas of their work: dreaming, drudgery, design, and development. And although real risks arise that generative AI could be used to replace human activities in these areas, most respondents described generative AI more in an assistive terms as technologies rather than replacing what they do. So dreaming, this is a way that I use it a lot, thinking about brainstorming, getting unstuck from ideas. Joyce Valenza always refers to AI as the starter dough that gets you going on something, put some words on a blank page when you're having trouble getting started. Design, so creating presentations and slides, materials, and I'll show you some examples of slide creation if that's something that's you could use help getting started on. Drudgery, so things that can help to lighten your load, like sending communications. I don't know, for me, I write a lot of like letters of recommendation, and while you definitely need to put a lot of personal touches in those, having some place to start can really help to get the task done more quickly. And then development or advancing your own work. Oops. What happened? Did my screen? Oops,
Yeah, we see a website now.
oh, sorry, I clicked on a link. Let me make this bigger again. Share. Sorry, everyone. Oops,
While you're
share
doing that,
slideshow.
we can go ahead and address the question that was in chat. So there
Sure.
was a question that if I enter a prompt with more creative or expressive language, I would likely get a better answer, such as if I were to ask AI to generate a short story and I gave an outline of what the story should be about. And then Vanessa answered, and I'll let you go back to that. But then I do have an example of just when we were trying to put this presentation together. You'll see when we get to my part, there are some images that were created with AI, and Jenna was getting much better images than I was because she was putting in just kind of different more detailed description of what she was looking for. So yeah, I think that if you are entering more specific information about what you're looking for, it will, and you use more creative expressive language, then the AI will in its answer.
Definitely. Right. And I have a couple of slides coming up about crafting prompts that we can do a little bit of experimenting with language too, about creating prompts. This is another blog post from that same blog that I know Valerie put in the chat, but I think this is a really, really useful way to think about some of these tools, treating them like they're your intern. And he writes a really good post about onboarding your AI intern, teaching it what you need it to do, figuring out the kinds of tasks that you would have your intern do, right? So there are things that like only I can do. They require my special knowledge, like they need my little bit of creativity, and there are things I really want to have control over. And then there are things that I can often delegate to others. There are things that are really automatically done that I don't need to do that maybe take up a lot of my time. And this is just kind of a brainstormed list of things that your intern might do. By the way, this is a photograph from Adobe Firefly. I asked it to give me a cartoon style picture of an eager intern. And I think that it kind of, it's okay. But anyway, so if you're thinking a little bit about what your intern might do, and as we sort of go through this list, if you could all think about other ideas, like what are some things that you would have an intern do? What are some tasks that you could offload onto somebody else that you might be able to get a little feedback from? So for example, drafting slide decks, for professional development sessions like this one. We didn't do that exactly. We put the images in, but we could have gotten a good start on this through some slide generators. Creating analogies for complex ideas or processes, reducing text complexity, which Valerie will talk about later, translating, which Valerie will also talk about, summarizing large bits of text, generating discussion questions. I'm always doing that for my classes. And it's not that I would necessarily use exactly what's given to me, but it could really help me think about some things like that. Topic selections, playing the devil's advocate. You could ask ChatGPT to play the devil's advocate for you to help you think through some things. Suggest tools, suggest resources, organize to-do lists, etc. I was working with a group last week and we were trying to find all the school library programs because we wanted to send an email to the coordinators of those programs to fill out a survey for us. And, there are like 100 or so that ALA accredited programs that we wanted to send these emails out to. We put together a spreadsheet of all these schools, and then we needed to go find email addresses for each of these program coordinators. And my colleague just put it into Copilot, like who are the program coordinators and what are their email addresses for like these 10 schools. And it wasn't perfect. Some probably because of the way that they're titled didn't find it that easy, but they linked us to the website to go find it. And it was just like a really easy way to work around a task that could have taken a really long time. Does anybody have any other ideas about tasks, like little automatic type tasks that you would have an intern do in the chat? I'll give you a minute.
Or even a volunteer if you're thinking about like at a public library.
Yeah. And I know somebody put earlier, artificial assistant is some of the words they were thinking about for AI, and I think that's good too. No? Okay. Oh. Fun descriptions for library programs. Excellent idea. Like, what a good way to just get that started. And you could say, depending on your space, like, explain a program in 20 words and explain it in 100 words. I'm always asked to like come up with a short description and a long description, and keywords, Okay, Adele says, I just had a large amount of text, 3 pages that I needed to extract the title and author for about 30 books mentioned in the text. Yeah, absolutely. That would work really
Jenna,
well.
what you just said gave me an idea, like, and for many of the folks here, like when you're applying to present at a conference, it's always hard, like, what am I going to say about, like, I know what I'm presenting, but how am I going to do that? So yeah, that's a really great use of it.
Yeah, I mean, I know, and I think, Vanessa, you've done this too, but I've definitely worked on papers and then plugged them in and been like, can you help me get started on an abstract for this? It's just kind of a tedious task, but that can end up taking a lot of time. Okay, well, we don't have to belabor this point, but if you think of things as we're going, little ideas for things you could try, go ahead and continue to put them in the chat. Here are just some questions, and these prompts could definitely have been crafted better, but I asked them, how could you help me as a college professor? How could you help a school librarian? How could you help a public librarian? And I do think that there are quite a few good ideas in here, even if this is not like an exhaustive list, but just good starting points. And I don't need to go through all of them, but if you wanted to just take a peek, we'll share the slides. And you can do it yourself. Okay, so like let's talk a little bit about prompts, because creating a good prompt and reworking the prompt and continuing to like engage with like ChatGPT after you get information to hone the information is really the key to getting what you need out of it. So a couple things to think about to create a really good prompt. The first is that a lot of folks suggest that you give it a role. You tell it, who is it giving the information for? Like, you are a middle school teacher, you are a public youth services librarian, because that will shape the kind of output that you get, the style of language that's being used in your output. And telling it what kind of output you're looking for. Do you want a bulleted list? Do you want 50 words? Do you want 10 suggestions? That kind of thing can help to get you what you need as well. Telling it who it is and what it can do. For example, you're a middle school teacher, so the same with the role that I was talking about, or you're a marketing consultant. And then you want to be interactive. So tell it where it's making mistakes. Like, that's not what I was looking for. I need something that's a little bit more like this. Maybe there's an area where you need more information. You can ask it to critique itself, and you can also give it more information to like further get at the specifics of what you're looking for. On the next two slides are just a couple of acronyms for prompt crafting and prompt engineering that you might find useful. This CREATE framework, I think especially a lot of people who are working in schools, we love an acronym that we can teach to students to remember, especially when it comes to information literacy. But clarity, so clearly define the task or intent of the prompt. Relevant info, so giving it as much details as you can, particularly about what you're looking for, but who's the tone, who's the audience, what's the format. Using examples in the prompt to provide context. Avoiding ambiguity when possible. Tinkering, so testing, giving feedback, refining your prompt. Don't just take what you get in the first answer. And then continuously evaluating the output and adjusting the prompt as needed to improve quality. So that's the CREATE framework. This is the prep the machine, edit the outputs. This is the prep and edit framework, but really similar ideas here. Introduce the question, give it a role, be explicit in your instructions, set the parameters, etc. And then that kind of interactive piece after you've gotten your initial output to get what you're looking for. I did it again. So sorry, everyone. It's because I have all of those images linked, and you can see it, can't you? I'm just gonna not go back to it. Okay. It's because I have everything linked for you, and it's just taking me to, oh my God, I did it again. Let me just try to use let's just use my arrows on my keyboard. Sorry about that. Okay, so let's do a little bit of practice. You can use ChatGPT, but if you already have something else open that you use, I'd be happy to get your responses from other models as well. Start with the prompt, what should I make for dinner? Put that into ChatGPT or whatever model you're using. And then I want you to just do a little bit of thinking about how you could rework the prompt. Of course, best results are different depending on who you are. Valerie will not eat meat, so like she's going to need to evaluate, she's going to need to rewrite that prompt differently than I would. But think about like all the ways that you could craft a prompt that would give you really useful results in this area. So we'll just give you a couple of minutes, try a few things, and then rework your prompt as you get answers to consider roles, consider the output that you're looking for, give it feedback. And then if a few of you have any reflections on that activity after you do it, we can come back and hear those. So why don't I just give you just 2 or 3 minutes? I didn't even know that Snapchat, wait, so Snapchat has an AI?
I am Googling it now.
I should too. Told it I'm a busy librarian who needs to make a quick dinner at 7:30 p.m. tonight. What should I make that has less than 5 steps? I love that prompt. What did it tell you?
The suspense is killing me.
I know, me too. How about a simple pasta dish? Boil pasta, saute veggies, mix together, and voila. Yeah, that's pretty basic, but simple. Oh, good. Gave you a link recipe. I need an easy dinner using chicken and vegetables and a stir fry. Good. Did it give you a good recipe?
And Lori, who did you ask? Did you use ChatGPT? Oh, Copilot. Oh, Hannah used Copilot.
Hannah tried Copilot and gave a list of 10 meal ideas with a 1-sentence description of each, and I could click each for a linked recipe. Good. With ChatGPT, I think I typically have to like ask for links if I want them like that sometimes. I told it what my leftovers were and asked what I can do with it for dinner, and I'm actually going to use one of the ideas. Excellent. Okay. Good. So you get the point. The more details you put in the prompt, you get a better result. And the more specific you, oh, here we go. I'm going to read a couple more. I was a lazy pescatarian and it gave me a recipe with shrimp. So I told it to try again because the only seafood I eat is salmon, but I don't want to eat fish or pasta tonight. It gave me a recipe for salmon fried rice. I told it to try again because I don't want salmon, and it gave me a recipe with shrimp. I told it I don't eat any fish or seafood other than salmon, but I don't want to eat fish or seafood tonight. And it finally gave me a vegetarian stir fry. Okay, so that pescatarian in the original prompt is really throwing it for a loop, but eventually, with the right amount of feedback, you got what you needed. Good. And Mahogany says it also gave me prompts to ask what is a good sauce for the pasta and what vegetables I could use. Good. Okay. Well, so everybody knows what to cook for dinner tonight. But oh, one more. I used ChatGPT and asked about what to eat for dinner, and it just listed some random options. Then asked for a recipe with specific food, and it gave me one. Then asked with a recipe with specific food to cook in under 10 minutes. You're correct. It just listed things out without links. So you might be able to then say, can you give me links for that list? And then they would maybe give you some. But yeah, so the more information you can put in about the ingredients that you already have, what you're looking for in the output is going to get you better results. An example of a prompt for readers advisory, one that, if you're working in public libraries or school libraries, you would maybe use often. You are a librarian recommending books to a middle school student. What are 5 books that you would recommend to someone who loved Ender's Game? And then I got this list and I said, but could you suggest some that have been published in the last 5 years? And I did get a more diverse list when I did that. And I think that I could even push it a little bit further in that way too, to really get what I want. But like without me there helping ChatGPT to give me that list, I would have ended up with just Maze Runner, Hunger Games, Aragon, which is a really pretty basic list for those of you who know much about dystopian YA. It's an older list. It's a little bit basic. It's not a very diverse list. So with the librarian there helping it with the prompts, I can get a better list, and I could probably get some links too if needed. So that's just an example. Oh, I wanted to just show you a couple more things and then I'll pass it off to Valerie. Some things that that you could use, often there's a lot of things that we could be reading, articles and journals, research articles. And even though that's part of my job, it's often difficult to find the time to do that. But also probably there's a lot to read in practitioner publications. And there are quite a few things out there that will look through articles. You can upload a PDF or even just, a link, and will give you article summaries and pull out keywords or pull out important points. And again, they're not perfect. I think they're getting better. Oh my God, I did it again. So sorry. I just tried an article that's often difficult for me to read, or anything by Dr. Kitzie. Just kidding. Anyway, I uploaded a couple of hers to a few different places just to kind of see what would happen. This is Scholar-C. I uploaded the PDF of her article, and then there are lots of different ways that lots of outputs it gives you, but this is supposed to be kind of like a summary. It says this article explores how search engines and social networking sites impact the information practices of LGBTQ millennials in the US, highlighting the importance of visibility, anonymity, and association in shaping their experiences. Would you say that that's like an accurate one-sentence summary of your article?
Yeah, makes
Yeah.
a lot of sense to me too.
That one's nice if you're interested in research. It breaks down, like, it's got a little summary of methods, it's got a little summary of the lit review, etc. Another one is the text analyzer by JSTOR. This one's a little bit different. You can upload any bit of text into the text analyzer. So I put Vanessa's article in, and it pulls everything that they think that's in JSTOR that would be of use to me based on what was in that article. So it pulled out some different, I'm not sure that your work was really about queer theology, but like there are some keywords it pulls out, and then it looks for anything that's available within JSTOR that I might find useful. This one wasn't as useful for me, but I did this morning I'm going to come back to this one. I did this morning I asked a question in Consensus because I was working on a literature review, and I wanted to know about like what factors are important in like effective mentoring relationships and education. And I find an excellent article in Consensus. So these are just places where you can ask a research question, and it will link you to a lot of different research articles, and they give you kind of this like one sentence summary of what's in there. I just put in, do children who attend daycare have more illnesses? And you can see there's quite a variety of different things. And like the article that I found this morning is in a journal I like typically don't search through, and I'm not sure that I would have found otherwise. So in this case, it was kind of nice to have this like other platform looking outside of my area. I'm going to go back in terms of productivity to some of these presentation creators. I'm going to be working on a lecture for my class tomorrow about understanding disabilities in youth literature. And I just put in, I want a slide deck about bibliotherapy and understanding disabilities in youth literature. That's the topic of my lecture. I already have a slide deck that I'm going to be using, but this is just to show you what comes out, the agenda that they put together. And then it's like a 20 slide presentation that's filled with content. Of course, I would never be able to just use this. I wouldn't be able to just like download it and present it to my class. There's a lot that needs to be verified. But in terms of coming up with just a structure for a presentation, I think that this could be really useful if I was starting from scratch. And it definitely kind of defines some parameters on each slide. And there's just a couple things that it brought up that I hadn't thought of that weren't in my lecture that I give all the time, that I think we're good to think about. This is just, when we get to the petting zoo, there are quite a few different slide generators you could look through if you're interested in stuff like that. But this one is called Slides GPT. Okay, that's where I'm going to hand it to you, Valerie.
All right, so we have talked about what AI is and where it gets its information from and different ways to use it for productivity. And now we're going to talk about ways that we can use it specifically in libraries with our patrons and with our students. So we're going to start, and I was like clicking ahead like I had control of the slides. We are going to start with a video that it's for fun, but as you're watching, we want you to think about what is AI doing well here? What does it get wrong? This is one of my daughter's favorite YouTubers, TD Bricks, I think is his name. And he asks AI to help him with some Lego builds. So let's check it out and then we'll talk about it.
Going to use artificial intelligence to help me design several different things in Lego. Let the challenge begin. Okay, so if you don't know what artificial intelligence is, it's pretty much a really smart computer you can interact with. But is it a true master Lego builder? We're gonna find out. Let's start by asking it to help us build one simple thing in Lego, like a hot dog. And look at that. It gave me all the pieces I need, and it gave me a list of steps. Well, here's the pieces it requested, and following the instructions, this is how it turned out. Okay, this doesn't really look like a hot dog. This looks more like one of those phone holders you put in your car. You guys know what I'm talking about? But obviously, this was just one little mistake, right? I mean, AI is so smart, guys. So I went ahead and asked it for another build idea, this time a chicken. And following the instructions, I got this. So yeah, there is a problem with AI, I think. Guys, this can't be. This is artificial intelligence. It's supposed to be smart. Clearly, AI had to give me something good to build. In a desperate search for fire content, I continued asking artificial intelligence for more Lego ideas, and it gave me these. I'll give you 3 seconds to guess what this first one is. Well, most likely you're wrong because this is a cookie. This next one is a fish. I think the slope is supposed to be a fin and the stud is supposed to be an eyeball. Here's a dinosaur. Wait, do you like the Jurassic Park meme? Then I asked AI to help me build a spider. Definitely not something I want to find under my bed. Here's a minion from Despicable Me. Here's a boat, an airplane, toaster. I think the white piece is supposed to be bread. A skyscraper looks like something I would make if I were 5. And finally, a penguin, a very thick one. I'm guessing if I showed these Lego builds to a random person in public, they wouldn't be able to tell if a 5-year-old built these or a highly intelligent supercomputer. Let's ask AI to build us a rescue helicopter. The propeller on this doesn't spin, but at least if a Lego man falls in the river, we can successfully save him. How about a basic Lego man? It said I needed black legs, white hips, a blue torso with black arms, white hands, and a yellow Lego head. Dang, that outfit low-key looking drippy though. Congratulations, you have now made a Lego man.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
What about a tree? This one uses green studs for leaves.
Wow.
And brown plates for roots. I mean, honestly, this isn't bad. This actually looks like a tree. Let's see what happens when I ask AI for a random Lego build idea. Oh, dang, it's cooking. Okay, let it cook. Okay, vehicles. Try building a car, truck, boat, or airplane. Okay, what kind of vehicle should I make? Okay, a simple but fun Lego car. You'll need a 2x4 brick for the car body, 2 2x2 round bricks for the wheels, and 2 2x2 plates to attach the wheels to the car body. So I went ahead and built it using my real Lego pieces and got this. It doesn't really seem like a car because it only has 2 wheels. It looks more like a hoverboard. Does artificial intelligence have a good sense of humor? Give me a Lego dad joke. Okay, why did the Lego man go to sleep? Because he had blockage in his plastic. Yeah, I guess not. Another question I have is, can artificial intelligence give me a cool random fact? Lego is the largest tire manufacturer in the world. They make over 306 million of them every year. That's actually pretty cool. I didn't know that. For this next challenge, I'm going to ask AI to build me something with 10 pieces, 50 pieces, and 100 Lego pieces. For the 10-piece build, it had me make a stoplight. And I will say, if this is what they look like in real life, there would be a car accident every 5 seconds. For the 50-piece build, it's time to sit back and watch me cook. Because AI had me build a miniature Lego tower. And for the final 100-piece build, AI had me build a massive robot. But the real question, though, is like any good robot, will this do what I tell it to do? Hey, you, make me a cookie. Good job, robot. Well, out of the 3 builds, the robot was definitely my favorite one. Okay, guys, as you can see, now I'm wearing a chef hat because artificial intelligence is about to cook for us. I asked my fans on Instagram what I should ask AI to build in Lego, and we had a lot of requests. Here's a Lego tank, and the instructions told me to add a turret on top that can move around. Here's SpongeBob. The program was definitely tweaking out because they had me use way too many colors. Here's a skateboard, and you can also do some pretty cool tricks with this thing. Here's a turtle. A shoe. I'm definitely going to be fresher than Subway wearing this. A Minecraft creeper. Here's an IKEA meatball. And in the instructions, it requested a 1x1 meat slope. So I'm not sure what that is. And in the instructions, it was so detailed and descriptive. It had 3 1x1 round plates to the top of the meatball. These will represent the herbs or spices often added to meatballs. Here's an artificial intelligence creation of Mario. I also asked artificial intelligence to build artificial intelligence in Lego, and it told me it's not possible because it's a complex software-based technology. And here's Shrek. He looks like he came from a hydraulic press. A banana. Here's a basketball. Let's secure a quick three-pointer with this. Yes! Here's a trampoline, but does it actually bounce a minifig? Oh, that didn't work. Here's a lightsaber that only uses 2 pieces, and compared to a normal lightsaber, it's pretty much the same. Here's an egg, a gaming setup that comes with a desk, 1 monitor, a PC, and a gaming chair. And finally, a flip phone. Sadly, though, it doesn't close all the way. You know what I realized? This whole time, I've let technology control me. But now, I'm gonna tell AI what to do. Because I discovered a feature where you can have it generate a unique image for you based on the words you give it. Guy building a Lego set. Wow. Will you look at that? That doesn't really look like Lego, but still, that's really impressive. Here's a drippy Lego man. Here's a Lego basketball player, a Lego car drifting, giant Lego brick. I'm gonna be honest though, some of the stuff is just like so creepy, man. This program was actually really addicting. So I then spent the next several hours playing around and seeing what I could generate. A Lego dolphin, Lego policeman, Lego Shrek and donkey in a swamp, a Lego man sitting on top of chicken, Lego squirrel eating a nut. That looks more like a kangaroo, honestly. Lego SpongeBob, Lego dragon breathing fire, Lego Buzz Lightyear. Yo, why does the top of his helmet look like a snail though? Lego Kung Fu Panda, Lego Lightning McQueen from the Cars movie, Lego Morgan Freeman. But then I thought to myself, what if I recreated some of these images with real Lego? Okay, I found this one. It's Mike Wazowski from Monsters, Inc. So let's try to build this with my real Lego. I mean, he's supposed to be round, so I'm not sure why he's a block in this picture. There's also a feature where you can give it an image and it will modify it for you. I want to try to confuse it, so I'm going to use this cursed minifig with arms and legs going in both directions. Oh, wow, it actually corrected it. Like, the arms look completely normal in these ones. I also made this house, but it's built at a 45-degree angle. So let's see if this confuses AI. Okay, we actually fooled it. You can see the roof on this one looks really terrible. Still, though, that's a really impressive house, I've got to say. Comment below if you think AI is going to take over the world. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.
All right, so in the chat, go ahead and share your thoughts. Like, what do you think AI was doing a good job with? What was it getting wrong? And just what are your thoughts about this video? As you are sharing your thoughts, a couple of things that come to my mind with this video is, first of all, a lot of libraries are doing maker spaces, right? So I can see this video or this idea being something that you use in a maker space right away. If you've got Legos, you know, ask it to build something. And I think that he kind of talked about the way you're asking for what you want matters. So if we say you have 1 red brick, you know, you actually like tell it exactly what you have, is that going to be better? So I think it really kind of depends on what you're putting in there. And so, yeah, he does talk very fast. And we will get to some of these comments. So I like when he engaged in a dialogue with AI by creating an actual Lego creation based on the AI image. Could be an interesting program for kids or even adults. Yes. I feel like it was weird, but he was training it. All of the funny stuff could have been used to teach AI to do things better later. Adele says, I was shocked that it generated a black guy using Legos when it wasn't specifically told to. That's really interesting that you say that, Adele, because also I had that same experience earlier today when I was creating or trying to create, because actually we ended up using one of Jenna's images, but I was putting in like confused readers or something along those lines. I never asked it to do anything, you know, I didn't say like black readers, white readers, or anything like that, but I did get people of color in the image. So very interesting. But she's had, Adele has had bad luck with getting DALL-E to generate Black people doing neutral things. I have found that it only generates them when asked for things around crime, hip hop, and other stereotypes. And I think that's something that Kitzie will probably get to later when we talk about ethical use. And also she included a link in there about is ChatGPT racially biased. And then Lori says used a tool Bing Images Create. Used this to create an image yesterday. So we'll talk about some image creation, or we actually already have been talking a good bit about it. But I think that this is a great starting point and kind of a funny way to share AI and things that it can do, things that it can't do with your students or your patrons. Jenna, next slide, please. And as we were talking about earlier, that we were saying things like AI could take our job, or that, you know, it's not a human. And I think all of that is very important to think like we still need librarians, we still need library workers and the information professionals to help folks understand what the information is AI is sharing with them. So this is a graphic from a school library journal article that recently came out. Information evaluation is the same basic concept librarians have taught for years. AI is simply the newest tool for that. So librarians have always learned how to kind of use and understand whatever information tool is out there and share with our students and patrons how to use it and how to evaluate the information that is coming from it. And so we're just going to do that same thing with AI. Yep, I'm ready for AI literacy. So that's what we just need to teach our patrons and our students. So AI is a literacy, just like information literacy, media literacy, any of the other literacies that we are helping our students and our patrons understand. So it's important for patrons and students to understand the basic concepts, know how to critically evaluate the information that they're getting, and going back to what we were just talking about, the bias that might come from the things that we're asking AI for. Consider the ethical implications of AI. And then just today, I was checking my email on Common Sense Media. Any of you that are familiar with that resource, they do reviews for parents on, you know, video games and movies and such, but they also have a educator side, and they have just now released like a module of lessons for teaching students how to be AI literate. And so there is a link here for that, and it's AI literacy lessons for grades 6 through 12. And I think that a lot of them could be modified for higher ed, or even if you are in a public library and you're doing some sort of workshop or program for your adult learners, you could use that to guide your way. Next slide, please. So I'm going to share more practical ways to use this in your everyday work. One person earlier mentioned that when they thought of AI, they thought that it was another tough thing. And the word cheat came up a good bit when we were asking for folks to give us their 3 words. But it's really, there's so many wonderful uses that are really going to be very helpful to you, I think. And so not tough, and not something that, like, you know, you would use to cheat on anything with. So this suggestion or idea I thought was really smart. So, you know, a lot of times your library patrons, I know when I was an elementary school librarian, like, folks assume that you have read every single title in that library, right? And you haven't. You've used selection tools and reviews to to do your collection development. And of course, you've read a lot of them, but not all of them. And so if there is a book that you need a summary of, this librarian in the School Library Journal article suggested or stated that she uses AI to create an engaging summary of the book, or to help create different promotional things to grab students' attention, whether it's a social media post idea or a book recommendation. So going back to like the read-alikes that Jenna shared, and also had a thought and it left my brain. Oh, maybe a book talk script. So you know, things like that could be really useful with AI. Next slide, please. Again, here's another reader's advisory example. This was a read-alike for New Kid here. So the prompt was read-alikes for New Kid by Jerry Craft. And then it gave you a list, and then it had a different kind of example of the prompt. I like New Kid by Jerry Craft. What other books would I like? So just some more examples for reader's advisory. Next slide. And then this was a really interesting idea. So we asked as a student, so I am a 10th grade student in a US government class, suggest some primary sources related to American democracy. So this is a way that a student might use AI to then go to other sources. So one thing I'm not sure that we've mentioned or we might get to is of course, like with anything, with any tool, with Wikipedia or anything else, or when we're evaluating the information that we're getting from these sources, you know, I've heard that like sometimes when you ask AI for a source, like it's not a real source, like it doesn't exist, right? So you will have to check these and make sure that if your students are using it to help them gather information and sources to start their research with, make sure that it's actually, you know, a relevant, real source. But next slide. I see that my part, I'm running out of time. So you can also use it as a translation. So I asked ChatGPT to translate this little description of Davis College. Many of you are alums, so you know Davis College is the library school out on campus, and our website describes Davis College, where the School of Library and Information Science is located, has recently undergone some big changes. I got it translated into French. Now, I am not a French speaker, so I am not certain that that's exactly correct, right? But let's say you're in a public library or in another space, an academic setting where you don't speak the same language as someone who has a question. So maybe you can use this to help translate. Of course, there are other translating tools out there, but this is one way that maybe you could do that. Next slide. So reducing text complexity, and here is my confused reader that I was trying to get earlier. But this is a research article about computer programming, I think, that I searched on Google Scholar to find something that would be really kind of like very confusing for me to read. And so I copy and pasted just a little, like a part of this article. And then next slide. What ChatGPT gave me when I pasted it. First, I didn't even ask it any questions. I just, after I pasted the paragraph into ChatGPT, it gave me a summary. So you can see the study used several instruments to assess different aspects of cognition in children, and then it lists them. And then I said simplify for a 4th grader. And so it further simplified it. This is getting, you know, getting it simplified using ChatGPT, but there are also AI resources out there that are specific for differentiating your instruction and differentiating reading levels. But this is just one kind of quick and easy way to do that. Next slide. using it just in practical, like day to day, what you're doing with your programming every day and with your patrons. So going back to like our Caldecott example earlier, activities to go along with Big by Vashti Harrison is the newest Caldecott, and it gave me some ideas on things that I could get readers to do with Big after reading it. But one thing, if you have read Big by Vashti Harrison, you'll see that the examples that it's giving here, it says it's a wonderful book that inspires readers to dream big and follow their passions. Here are some activities that can complement the themes of the book. These are really wonderful ideas, but if you've read it, you know that really like the main idea of that book is to be proud of your body. And none of that comes up as part of the suggestions for from ChatGPT. So that I thought was very interesting. Next slide. And then often, if you're in all of the Facebook groups that I'm in, I am in a lot of library ones, and you'll see questions like this come up all the time. So just today, I'm being asked to create programs for tween-aged patrons. What have been your most successful tween programs? So this person asked on a Facebook group, and of course there are actual real-life librarians giving their ideas, but then too, I put the same question in ChatGPT and got some really good programming ideas, I think. So just another way to use it if you're kind of like, you're just burned out of thinking of programs for your library. Maybe this will help inspire you. Next slide. And then this was an event from a public library that I found online that I thought was really interesting. So they had like a festival where they explored several AI storytelling tools, and then they had a storytelling festival where folks created it. They worked in group. It was a workshop for beginners, and they worked in groups to create stories that now live on the YouTube channel for this public library. So I just wanted to share this as an actual like event you could do all about AI with your patrons. Next slide. And then I think finally, I think this is my last idea, just knowing in a public library world, of course, it's coming up to summer, but I think this is the kind of thing that happens all the time in a public library in the children's area, or even in adult settings, college libraries. You know, coloring is a very relaxing activity, right? And so Coloring Book Hero on ChatGPT will create coloring sheets based on what you ask for. So I know the summer reading theme is like adventure awaits or something like that. So I put adventure in the library as my prompt, and it gave me a very detailed coloring sheet, which would be great for adults and teenagers. But the one that I shared here is when I said make it a little bit easier for younger children. So you can just use these resources and tools in so many practical ways in your library. And so I hope that some of those examples have inspired you, because I think now we can go to our, ethical issues. I thought it was petting zoo time. I'm sorry.
And don't worry, I'm only going to speak for a few minutes to make sure that we have fun with the petting zoo as opposed to the Debbie Downer ethical issues, although they are important. So when I was defining kind of generative AI, one of the things that was a highlight of the definition is the fact that often now you're having the software recognizing the patterns and making predictions without direct human intervention. That is not the same thing as saying that we could completely detach ChatGPT from people and from social forces. And one of the problems is that often because we think that ChatGPT algorithms are not relying directly on people, that they're somehow more objective or neutral. And so we tend to take what they generate more seriously sometimes than when we're relying on an individual. But the fact is that we can't separate people from technology. So just as an intellectual exercise, think about what are all of the things and people that are needed to power something like ChatGPT. And so some ideas, and you can contribute additional ones in the chat, but just some thoughts to get you started. Of course, the software, your hardware, so like your computer and your phone that you have to use to access it. The people who are hired to train the ChatGPT data. So ChatGPT is a supervised learning model, meaning that they actually employ people to say, this answer is better than that answer, or this answer has offensive information. You have the board of directors of OpenAI. They're shaping, right, the policies that are then discussing how your data can be used and how it can't be used when you're using ChatGPT. You as users can provide input to ChatGPT, like a thumbs up or a thumbs down. So you shape how it is used. Expectations, like I'm seeing this chat, I'm seeing this chat where people are talking about how their school districts have banned ChatGPT. That is influencing how it's used. So again, all of these examples are trying to illustrate to you that you can't separate the social from the technological. So when we think about something like ChatGPT and its ethical consequences, we can't just think of it as this neutral sort of technology that's making decisions for us, and that's going to give us more objective information just because it's being trained with larger data sets. Next slide. So again, if we're thinking about ChatGPT as part of this, as comprised of like a complex web of software, hardware, people, rules, norms, and practices, then there's a lot of ethical issues that it can produce. So some ethical issues to be mindful of when using tools like ChatGPT would be copyright and intellectual property issues. So there's been a lot of discussion within, for instance, fan fiction communities about how ChatGPT's training model was using publicly available fan fiction. And that is being then used by ChatGPT to predict, to find patterns in that fan fiction and to then generate additional stories based on the structure of people's intellectual property. So there are issues around who owns the data that ChatGPT's training data set is being trained on. Another one is that ChatGPT exploits international labor. This is something that happens with content moderation, like across the board. And so what tends to happen is that low-paid international workers, we're talking about like $2 an hour pay, something like that, where people are just basically put into a large room and then they're asked to review responses that are flagged as like problematic, offensive, inappropriate, those sorts of things, and provide feedback as to whether they actually are or not. That's the part of the supervised learning that I was discussing in the last slide. And so as you can imagine, people actually, there are instances where content moderators get PTSD. They're not really offered any forms of like support for the content that they're being exposed to. ChatGPT has some pretty poor environmental impacts because, again, it's not just comprised of software. You need to have hardware to power it, which takes a lot of energy. And so I found this statistic that training ChatGPT models led to emissions of more than 550 tons of a carbon dioxide equivalent into the environment. ChatGPT can lead to the spread of misinformation. So it can attribute quotes, for instance, to people who haven't said those quotes. And so that can lead to the spread. You've also had over time, actually, instances of content farms using ChatGPT to generate false content that they can then share on their own web platforms. Another thing that we're starting to see emerge is the fact that much like other technologies that rely on machine learning and deep learning, they're reinforcing explicit and implicit biases in the data that they then produce. And so we've seen some examples of that in the chat. And I actually linked to a recent Scientific American article that talks about this more, where specifically words like crime, knife, neighborhood, but then the only difference in the prompt was either the word black or white was put into the prompt, asking ChatGPT to generate a story. And as you can imagine, the content was very different based on whether the word black or white was used in that prompt. And the reason behind that is because if we're training a large scale model to be really, really good at predicting things and getting better at it over time, if we're training it on social data in which there's discrimination inherent, then it's only going to get better and better at discriminating using the data. And then compounded with the fact that we find AI to produce neutral or objective results that can lead to some pretty unethical and problematic decision making. ChatGPT can further exacerbate digital divide issues. And then especially because there's paid versions that certain people can access versus what's publicly available, right? And then also, as we've been saying, this is why it's very important for libraries, particularly because they lack the sorts of like commercial motivations of a lot of these companies like Microsoft who are introducing technologies like Copilot, having a voice in the ethical issues and communicating them to users. Next slide. So the last thing that I want to touch on, because some of you spoke in the chat about concerns of children, and also I would say undergraduates, we get this a lot, graduate students too, students of all ages, using this software to kind of cheat or commit acts of plagiarism. There might be ways to kind of reframe this sort of thinking, because often having punitive approaches like either completely banning the technology or saying that you're going to check whether somebody has plagiarized by using software like Turnitin, which is using AI to predict whether somebody has cheated or not. They presume guilt. They frame AI as this dystopian enemy that's going to just lead to bad behavior. The problem with these sorts of softwares is that when they flag something as being indicative of plagiarism, they're not 100% accurate. So there's always going to be false positives and false negatives. So some cheaters are going to skate by. Some people who aren't actually cheating are then going to have to go through the whole adjudication process of being accused of plagiarism. Results are often taken as definitive, even though they are not. Software like Turnitin also profits from student work because it uses it for its training model. It may disproportionately punish minority students. So as an example, am I, as an international student where English is not my native language, if I write something in my native language and then use ChatGPT to translate it, will that perhaps lead to my writing perhaps being flagged as being plagiarized? Because one of the things is ChatGPT predicts what the average person would say based on what it's recognized as patterns within the data that it's trained on. And so therefore, the more quote unquote average you write, the more likely it is you're going to get flagged for plagiarism. Even if you make a factual statement, right? So if I say the earth is round, that is likely to get flagged by this software as being plagiarized, just because it is an average statement. So if you are going to use these tools to monitor plagiarism, think about them as an opening for discussion rather than evidence. And so rather than turning a student in to, like, if it's academic libraries, Office of Academic Affairs or something like that, instead view this as an opening point for a conversation. And then final slide that I can zip through so we can get to this petting zoo. Alternative strategies you can consider to combat plagiarism if you're in an educational space. One is to modify your class activities. So a lot of classrooms are doing activities now where they're asking students to generate something about a topic they're learning using ChatGPT, and then asking the students to critique what ChatGPT did and saying what they would do differently. That's also a way to teach them about the limitations of this software. Collecting in-class writing. So having students write without any devices. And so you could get a sense of their writing style so that it gives you more of a contextualized approach to flagging when they're submitting assignments that don't sound like their writing voice. And then also rewriting assignments based on what AI does not do well. So ChatGPT cannot pull from specific life experiences because it doesn't have them, or examples that were shared in your class. So putting those into your assignment would be very important. Rewriting rubrics in order to make sure that you are assessing for those specific examples can also make it so that you don't have to flag somebody for plagiarism if you're not 100% sure. You instead will take off points just because they're engaging in average writing. And then finally, changing the assignment conditions. So in other words, thinking about like oral exams or things of this nature, if you really think that plagiarism is going to be a problem. And so I'm going to stop there. That way Jenna can talk a little bit about the petting zoo and at least give you future directions for how you might use it.
Yeah, so we don't have time to like do much reflection on the petting zoo, but basically this is kind of a dynamic document that Joyce Valenza created, breaking down a lot of different AI tools into different buckets. So I know that so many of you are coming from different environments and they're breaking this down. So for example, if you're in a school, there are some like pedagogical and instructional tools, some for creating art or creating poetry, etc., some for productivity. So just a lot of different things you can try, as well as like articles. And we were going to have you go look, pick one, kind of report back, but we don't have time to do that. So anyway, I just want to leave you with the link to the petting zoo if you want to look through what's there. She's updating it all the time, and was generous enough to allow us to just use it rather than reinvent the wheel here. So that's the petting zoo activity. And then we have about 4 more minutes. So if you want to ask any questions or if you want to take a look at what is there, we'll hang around and I'll put our email addresses on the next slide as well if you have any questions after the webinar. But otherwise, we appreciate your time today and your willingness to think about some of these things, even though as evidenced by our first activity, it can be a little bit scary. So let us know if you have any questions.
And if you have anything that you use, there was just a wonderful idea to have AI remind you to do several things to get ready for a program at a specific time. And then, of course, like AI itself says you can use it to help you plan a trip. Like there's just a lot of things that you can use it with. Or for. So in the chat, there was a question just to capture for the recording. If since AI is about 2 years behind, do we think it'll be closer to current search engines or will it likely lag for many years? And then Jenna said ChatGPT 4 is more current and powerful, but you have to pay for it. So there are several paywall issues, I guess, with ChatGPT. There are more features, if you pay for them.
Even when I was creating images for the slides, I had to keep switching to a new image generator because I would reach my limit of how many images I could create each month before I pay, which.
And I think with anything else, these AI tools, you just have to play with them to kind of get a feel for what they can do and what they can't do and how you'll use them. And it seems like there's a new AI tool out there, like a new one every day. So also don't get overwhelmed and feel like you have to know how to use all of them.
I don't know the answer to that. about paying for a library system. Do you all know anything about that?
I did see, so I think that it depends on the tool. Like there's one, I think Magic School AI, I believe that has like a district level. Like I think it just depends on the tool.
But I don't know about like ChatGPT 4.
Yeah. Yeah, and you'll see that. So Adele mentioned a browser that she uses on her phone that has AI features, and you'll see like even Zoom has an AI component, Canva, what I've been on, you know, it seems like every website now that you use or every tool that you use, there is some sort of AI add-on. So it's kind of everywhere. So just to go back to our point of before, you know, it's important to get comfortable with it and know how to use it appropriately because it's not going anywhere.
You're muted, Tiffany, if you're talking.
Shouldn't be muted.
Oh, I hear you now.
Okay. It's 3:31. I'm not seeing any other questions, so I am going to stop the recording here.